Seeing that we have a quorum, I'd like to call to order this Bloomington County Council special session of Thursday, October 10th, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rupp? Nope, sorry. Councilmember Chopra?
Here.
Piedmont Smith?
Here.
Frazier?
Present.
Rallo?
Here.
Volan?
Here.
Sims?
Here.
Sturbaum?
Here.
Sandberg? Here. Thank you.
Thank you. There are two items that I'd like to announce before we go to the, well, I'll do the agenda summation first. We have budget items this evening, and those consist of 6 items. Ordinance 1920 is the first, an ordinance fixing salaries of officers of the police and fire departments for the City of Bloomington, Indiana for the year 2020. Received the due pass recommendation of 107. Second item is ordinance 1921, an ordinance fixing salaries of appointed officers, non-union, and ASME employees for all of the departments of the City of Bloomington, Monroe County, Indiana for the year 2020. It received the committee recommendation of 2 to 4. Third item is ordinance 1922 to fix the salaries of all elected city officials for the City of Bloomington for the year 2020. It received the committee recommendation to pass 8-0. Fourth item is appropriation ordinance 1905, an ordinance for appropriations and tax rates establishing 2020 civil city budget for the City of Bloomington, receiving the due pass recommendation of 1 yes, 1 no, and 6 passes. Item 5 is appropriation ordinance 1906, an ordinance adopting a budget for the operation, maintenance, debt service, and capital improvements for the water and wastewater utility departments of the City of Bloomington, Indiana for the year 2020. It received the committee recommendation to pass 8-0. Last item is appropriation ordinance 1907, appropriations and tax rates for Bloomington Transportation Corporation for 2020, committee recommendation 8-0. Before we begin, I would like to announce that the Central Indiana Interpreting Services, CIS, provides American Sign Language, ASL services at our regular and special sessions. Sandy Grissom is here tonight to provide those services. Thank you, Ms. Grissom. 2 interpreters are recommended for meetings that last more than 2 hours. In planning for tonight, I expected that the meeting will not last more than 2 hours. However, in the event it does, Sandy will leave at the time that we have arranged. The second item is a disclosure of conflict of interest, and Councilmember Sims, would you like that opportunity?
I would, thank you. Now comes the time that we do once or twice yearly where I disclose a conflict of interest. And having said that, here we go. Tonight, the council is considering adoption of the budget for the city for the next year. As some of you may know, my wife serves as the department head for the HAND, Housing and Neighborhood Development Department. While I am allowed under statute to vote on the budget and salaries for members of my family, I want to disclose that fact before taking this action. There is a provision in local code, Bloomington Municipal Code 2.04.150, that provides a way for me to do so. It is this Bloomington Municipal Code, the Conflict of Interest Code, and applies to council members who are required to act on a matter that would directly affect their financial interest. After the council member explains the conflict of interest, it offers them a choice of either 1, asking that they be excused from voting, deliberating, or taking action on the matter, or stating why they are able to participate fairly, objectively, and in the public interest despite the potential conflict. In this case, having explained the conflict of interest, I want to announce that I intend to vote on this legislation and state the following reasons why I will be able to participate fairly, objectively, and in the public interest despite of it. The role of the council in the budget is limited. The package of legislation is proposed by the mayor, and the council in general may reduce but not add to the legislation. Also, locally, the salaries for employees are fixed according to citywide policies and through a process independent of this council. More importantly, I feel I have a duty to my constituents to participate in one of the main functions of the council, considering the annual budget for the next year. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to accept Councilmember Smith's
Second.
disclosure? Thank you. Is it required, do we require a vote?
No, this one doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay. All right, then we will not have a vote. Thank you for that disclosure. Now we can move on to legislation for second reading.
Yeah. Mr. President, I move that ordinance 1920 be introduced and read by title and adopted so moved.
Second.
It has been moved, and there is a second on ordinance 1920 to be read by title and synopsis only. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 1920, an ordinance fixing the salaries of officers of the police and fire departments for the City of Bloomington, Indiana, for the year 2020. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance sets the maximum salary rates for all sworn fire and police personnel for the year 2020 in accordance with the council-approved collective bargaining agreements. Your committee recommendation is to pass 107.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I move that ordinance 1920 be adopted.
Second.
Very good. Who will be presenting?
Hi, my name is Emily Fields. I'm Assistant Director of HR. Director Carolyn Shaw will be with you this evening. I'm here to present ordinance 19-20, which outlines the salaries for police officers and firefighters. And I'm happy to take your questions at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Fields. Other questions from council? Councilmember Rowland.
Yes, Mrs. Fields, is it? The vote was 107 last time. Has there been any change that you wish to report about the administration's feeling about that vote? Anything you want to say?
Maybe Nick or
Good evening, council members. Mick Renice, Deputy Mayor. I can report that we had a meeting set with the FOP to continue negotiations on October 23rd. So that's where we're at.
Any further questions?
I'm not even sure. I'll let other people ask questions. Thank you.
Okay. We will now go to Councilmember Short.
point of order, so that we understand for our discussion. Can I ask a question of our council attorney?
Please, yeah.
What was that date? You said October
24th.
24th. We have passed that date to council, pass the budget, is that correct?
Excuse me?
The council has passed that date, the 24th, to pass the budget, is that correct?
The budget needs to be adopted by, I think it's November 1st. And so you're not past that date.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Sturmo, do you have a question?
Yeah, there were requests that a consultant be hired to review staffing levels and salary. Could you report on that, please?
Yes, certainly. So we have been doing organizational assessments, essentially what you described, Councilmember Sturgeon, for the city for the last 2 years. We've done different departments. We started with planning and transportation, and public works, and IT, and we moved to the internal service departments this year. And the next group of departments that we were going to do is the public safety departments, both police and fire. So we have some money that will encumber for this year for that organizational assessment that can take place next year. We may have to come to you for an additional appropriation request, which is coming up in another month anyway on the schedule. We're getting quotes for that organizational assessment.
Happening before that survey.
There's no way that survey could be done before the end of the year. That kind of organizational assessment takes months, requires a lot of interviews with staff and both of those entities. Even if we focus on one over the other, the big department, they're both big departments, it's going to take several months to get through that.
Just could I ask that you take into account some of your knowledge of research that the police have done and others have done that should be levels and the need for levels.
So absolutely, we'll do an environmental scan of things that the FP has collected, things that the city has collected, things that the aid organization throughout the state has available to us. Those are all parts of the data that we use to.
And I'm asking you, can you use some of that before the 21st?
For the 24th? No, that's not possible to get a comprehensive study.
Not comprehensive, I'm just saying, there's a lot of information out there that I want to be assured that it's being taken into account when we negotiate.
Well, it has been all along in negotiations. We've taken information that the FOP has shared with us and vice versa.
Councilmember Sandberg?
You are talking about the quotes. Can you talk a little bit about who's going to be conducting these assessments? Are these outside consulting groups that are, do they have expertise in public safety, in particular to the needs of the police? Or
Yes, we would do a request for information, or we could use the firm we use for the others. It's called Novak. It's undetermined at this time. The firm that we have used for others has a great deal of experience.
And what was the name of the firm that's been
Novak.
used? Novak? And, okay.
And these are not salary studies. We did those with different firms. This is rather the staffing levels are they adequate.
But they will, or whoever is contracted to conduct this study will have kind of an outside eye on comparing us to other same-size cities with universities in it and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. They completely are given the time. We'll try to give them some suggestions as soon as we benchmark against. We certainly want to ask the FOP for some similar information, and then they'll do the work that the consultant does.
The information is gathered will then be for the students in next year's study.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bowman?
Yes, Mr. Sherman, what's the consequence of this ordinance not being passed? It would mean that salaries would stay the same as they were last year.
I think that applies, it's the appropriation ordinance that
So we're appropriating a
failure
pilot
to
rule.
adopt an appropriation ordinance, which is the fourth item tonight, and covers salaries, by the way. If you fail to adopt an appropriation ordinance that sets levies and sets rates, then you're stuck with this year's budget.
So this ordinance fixes the salaries, but again, if it doesn't pass, aren't the salaries, but they stay the same as 2019? I mean, this is an ordinance fixing the salaries of officers.
You need to authorize salaries in order for them to go into effect.
So again, I'm asking the question is, if this doesn't pass, is the result that there is no salary to be paid? Or
I
simply
believe
the
that's
salaries?
the case.
Okay, and October 31st. is-
Mr. Sherman, could you bring the microphone closer because it's difficult to hear anything?
October 31st is the last Wednesday that we would have to act on anything like this. But I mean, it's not November 1st deadline, we have to be done before midnight on November 1st, is that right?
I think it may be by November 1st. Our last regular meeting is a Wednesday, October 30th, that's correct. That is set up for, that's set up at the EO, but yes, that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Chopra?
My question was along that line. Help me understand, I'll let whoever wants to answer this answer it, but help me understand how the lack of negotiating that is occurring, in fact, there's not an agreement affects this ordinance specifically. That clarified it a little bit, but not completely.
I didn't hear you, if you could repeat that.
Yeah, my question is, how does the lack of a negotiated agreement between the FOP and the city affect this ordinance?
So how, can I rephrase that and see if I have it right?
Sure.
What happens if there's an agreement after the budget is adopted? Is that a good rephrase or not?
That's one way to affect it, so sure.
The council, the mayor can propose an additional appropriation, propose a resolution approving a collective bargaining agreement, propose an additional a change in the salary ordinance for this year and next year. So that's a package that could come forward and take the next step on the agreement and provide for funds for the salaries and funds for FOP.
So the salaries set in this ordinance reflect previous agreements?
We're in the evergreen, so we would be the previous agreement.
So it's actually this year's salaries.
That's correct.
So there really isn't much of an effect then, whether or not we pass this ordinance, other than fire.
Controller Underwood would like to speak.
Yeah, two points of clarification. If you do not pass a salary ordinance, there's no authorization to pay people. So if you would vote this salary ordinance down, we would not be authorized to pay people. Salary ordinance is what authorizes the pay. The appropriation ordinance appropriates the funds. I will give you an example of how this has worked in the past. If you remember last year with AFSCME, we did not have an agreement during the budget passage, nor did we have salary changes in the salary ordinance. We reached an agreement with them in late November, came back to the council and amended the salary ordinance to reflect that agreement. So those raises did go into effect for the following year. So in your question, if we can come to an agreement with the police department prior to the end of the year, we would come and have an amended salary ordinance. But you have to have an approved salary ordinance to amend. Salary ordinance authorizes what to pay people. The budget has the funds to do that.
Does it satisfy your question? Other questions from council? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Could I have a show of hands, just curious to see if you would like to speak? 3, 4 minutes? Okay, great. So we'll have 5 minutes per speaker. Please step to the microphone and state your name. And please sign in as well.
Please sign in after you speak to expedite the meeting.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jeff Rogers. I'm a member of the Bloomington Police Department. Just talk a lot about the single thing that I want to convey this evening is to ask you, please, do not pass this budget until we have the opportunity to meet with the city on October 24th. We are very pleased that the city has agreed to meet with us again, but we remain cautiously optimistic because of our meetings up to this point. Brief timeline of our negotiations. We met 4 times in 2018. Once we didn't come to an agreement, at the end of 2018, we entered the evergreen clause. So this year, we are working under a 0% raise. The first meeting of 2019 was not until April 19. At that meeting, the city declared an impasse. July 29th and August 6th, we met with the city along with the mediator. The last thing that was said to us by the city attorney at our last meeting in August, they handed us their proposal and stated that if we do not sign this proposal, we will enter January with no contract. It was asked if this was their last, best, and final offer, to which they affirmed. There would be no further negotiation or proposals beyond this point. Make no mistake, the only reason the city has come back to negotiate is because of the pressure on the mayor's office that they have received from this council, that they have received from the newspaper articles, that they have received from social media and from the citizens of Bloomington. If you approve the budget tonight, there's no further pressure on the city to negotiate. When we have our meeting 2 weeks from today, no reason to give any further offer from what they already have given. We continue to speak about recruitment and retention. I would like to give you just a few facts tonight regarding retention, why we continue to lose officers to other agencies. Currently, a 20-year officer at Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department makes $23,000 more than a 20-year officer at DPD, a little closer to home. Beginning in January, a 20-year deputy at more Morgan County Sheriff's Department, so Martinsville, Mooresville, they will make $14,000 more than a 20-year officer at BPD. Even closer to home, IUPD Bloomington, they now make what Bloomington makes. And they've already stated that they will give raises in the next 3 years because currently they are not competitive with other Big Ten universities. Now, these are all good departments with good officers who are fairly compensated for the work they do. I wish BPD was one of those departments. Please do not approve this budget tonight. Give us 2 weeks and continue to give the city's team incentive to negotiate with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jacob Woods. I'm the night shift representative from the Bloomington Police Department. Specifically, I'm here to speak to you tonight in regards to another updated snapshot for our current staffing issues. Last time I spoke with you, I pointed out that the Bloomington Police Department had approximately 30 of the shifts for September. Of the total 90 shifts that had to be staffed, 30 of them were going to be short-staffed. For October, we're looking at a little more bleak of a picture. Currently, there are 15 of those shifts that have been stated they're below minimum, which will likely be filled with involuntary overtime or voluntary overtime. As well, there are 20 additional shifts that have already have either volunteers or have been mandatorily staffed at this point. We had heard previously from Chief Beekoff that there's only 2 types of mandatory overtime for the police department, which included the little 500 weekend and the farmers market details we had over the last month. However, just since we last spoke, there's been 2 shifts that had an officer forced to be held over to work 2 shifts in a row. Just for this last year, since January, we've had 25 instances like that where an officer was required to work 2 shifts in a row. Also, since we last spoke, we've had an experienced officer leave Bloomington to go to a higher paying agency. This officer had substantial ties to this community, had been here for a very long time, children in these schools, and was lured away by an agency that paid substantially more than we do. Considering the stance of the city administration in regards to our salary and benefits, I can only foresee that this will continue to be a trend. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening, council members. Paul Post, President, Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 88. Over the past few weeks, we've provided you with hard facts and figures about the recruiting and retention problems at BPD, unavoidable truths about the state of this department. The issues that you have recognized within BPD are real and are affecting our officers. The rising overtime costs and understaffing numbers are a direct result of years of kicking this can down the road. To staff the department appropriately and bring down the overtime costs, we have to have the tools to recruit high-quality police candidates and then retain them over the course of years. The FOP wholeheartedly supports adding more sworn officers to BPD, but we know that we cannot do that until we are competitive again in paying benefits. It will take years to get BPD up to the staffing level it should be at to take some of the pressure off of the existing officers. How then do you lure these candidates to Bloomington? Through competitive salary and benefits. That's what communities all around us are currently doing. My colleague gave a few examples of that. We're seeing more and more each day. We do have a meeting set with the city for October 24th to continue discussing this. However, we see no reason to delay this for another few weeks and have asked to meet prior to that. We think that the month of October seems wasted. Following the last budget meeting, we did get a response from the city attorney regarding a proposal we sent to them. What we proposed would, in terms of 2019 figures, move BPD up the certified list from 66th to 34th place in the state. We were told that that was simply not feasible, that we were being unreasonable, and that we needed to think about the equity with other city employees. As for the idea that we need to be reasonable, I'll offer this. We have been very reasonable up to this point. We have recognized a major problem, we offered a solution, and we have met with delay and denial at every step to try to implement it. We looked at what other communities all around us have done to address similar circumstances. Cities like Columbus, Bartholomew County, Indianapolis, most recently Morgan County, as mentioned earlier. One today that was brought to my attention was Beech Grove, changed their numbers. They recognized these issues and took the steps to correct the trend through competitive pay and benefits. Is it reasonable that the police department, for the 7th largest city in the state, ranks 66th in pay? Is it reasonable that your police officers have not gotten a raise this year, while their sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and chiefs all did? Sergeants and lieutenants even got take-home cars this year in a change. Is it reasonable that it's been 5 years since your police officers got a true cost of living increase to their salaries? It doesn't seem very reasonable to us and our families. This then brings us to the idea of equity, comparing the officers to other city employees. If we did that same job or had the same working conditions that other city employees enjoy, we would not argue this point. But we do not. We work on holidays, during non-preferred hours, on snow days when other employees get the day off, doing a stressful job that fewer and fewer people are willing to take on. Most city employees have never gotten punched, kicked, spit on, or had their families threatened with physical violence. Most city employees have never, as a routine part of their job, held a dead baby that CPR could not save, or cut down a person who had hung themselves, or watched a car crash victim take their last breath. Most city employees have not held pressure on bleeding wounds of battery victims, or had to notify a next of kin that their family member was dead. Most city employees don't worry that their next citizen encounter could be one that they have to use lethal force in, and that they then become the next media-driven feeding frenzy. It's no wonder it's becoming harder and harder to recruit and retain quality police officers. We can no longer kick this can down the road. As a body, you have recognized the glaring issues at BPD relating to the overtime costs and staffing. We recognized them in 2018 when we started negotiating with the city and pointed out what it would take to make improvements. This proposed 2020 budget request does not adequately respond to those issues. It just continues to kick the can some more, and BPD will continue to fall in competitiveness around the state. We need you to tell the city team and the mayor that offering a fair and competitive salary benefits package will be the first needed step in this process. We need you to tell the administration that continuing to attack the existing benefits of officer shift bids will simply result in more officers leaving this agency. To the already overworked and beat down employees and their families, that benefit is of essential importance. This recruiting and retention problem is fixable. We've seen other places do it. It takes time and money, but it can be done. We've provided several examples of cities and counties around the state that have done just that. They did it, and so can Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there other comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll come back to council, but there may be further questions, so let's provide that opportunity. If council members have questions, please indicate. Councilmember Sandberg.
With respect to the October 24th date, is there no way that can be moved up? I don't know if you could answer that, staff.
That was the only day when the mediator and all of our team and their lawyer could all make it.
And the mediator from both sides of the...
It's a mediator who is provided by the Federal Mediation Service.
That oversees the entire...
Yes, trying to help us come to agreement.
Could you please state your name?
Olivia Guthrie, Corporation Counsel, sorry.
Another question, this might be for our attorney. Is it possible to separate the question here with police and fire because there are two salary budgets in this particular ordinance? Should that be, I'm not saying that's what we do, but if that's the desire of the council.
Interesting parliamentary question. Typically, when you have a piece of legislation and you're going to postpone it, that applies, attaches to the entire piece of legislation. So ordinarily you can divided question on adoption. I'm not certain whether you could do that on a motion to postpone. We treat dividing the question as an amendment, so this is not where we'd be applying that to a procedure. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, again, I don't know if that's what the will of the council might be here, but.
Controller Underwood, do you have a comment on that? In terms of what you need to provide to the state within the time frame?
That is the appropriation ordinance for the civil city and for transit. Those are the only two documents. The salary ordinance is an attorney document that authorizes salaries. The salary ordinance is what authorizes what levels to pay people. Again, we have had situations where we've come to an agreement after the budget was adopted as along with the salary ordinances, and we come back and amend those once we have an agreement to reflect that agreement.
Councilmember Sandberg, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Did you have?
No, I'm just kind of exploring here, and I understand the negative repercussions and that the precedent has already been set for when there still are negotiations left on the table. We go ahead and pass the budget as is and come back after the fact to with the big award or whatever that comes after the agreements are reached.
Yes. Let's see, I think Councilmember Sturbaugh was next.
Right, so a motion to postpone could mean that we could vote in when would be our next opportunity to vote? And what would be the consequences of that?
Can I take this one?
Well, you have to find the time. You've just set up a number of, 13 meetings for the UDO and for the rest of the year. So you could hold a special session. You could take the salary ordinance up at that special session. I'd have to look at the calendar and find what works for all of you. We've heard from the controller that what needs to be done before early November are the two appropriation ordinances. Right now we're talking about the salary ordinance. So you do have room to act after the end of October for that salary ordinance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rowland was next. Councilmember Piedmont-Smith.
So if I understand correctly, we are not under a November 1st deadline to pass this ordinance. We could wait to see what happens October 24th in the negotiations and table this ordinance until a date after those negotiations. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chopra.
That was my question, thank you.
Councilmember Rowland, did you have a
I
question?
was going to say, I spoke with Mr. Sherman about what possibility there was to postpone, and if we had a November 1st deadline for this ordinance, not the afterward, we would have the opportunity on October 30th. We could do a special session for the VDO. But if we don't have to have, the appropriation ordinance has to be passed on November 1, but the salary ordinances do not. Do I interpret that correctly? Mr. Sherman, Mr. Underwood?
Yes, that's
Correct.
Okay, that's the only thing I want to clarify. Thank you.
I have a clarification for the city controller. This particular ordinance, a salary ordinance, is for the year 2020, and so voting against this or postponing it would not jeopardize current salaries until January 1st.
That's correct. The current salary ordinances authorize payments through the end of the calendar year.
Other questions from council? Councilmember Piedmont-Smith?
Yes, I wanted to ask our council attorney, if we make a motion to postpone, do we have to have a specific date when we will take this up again?
My earlier conversations with you prior to the meeting, I was referring to the appropriation ordinance In this case, you do not need to set that at this time.
So we could move to postpone without saying when we're taking up this particular ordinance 1920.
I think the better option is to table. I'm worried that if you postpone without setting a date, it's treated as a defeat under our local code. So if you want more time, and you don't have a date in mind, I think the most appropriate motion is a table. That's undebatable, so I would offer some time to hear from people before you make the motion.
Thank you.
Is there when does that expire? In other words, how long can it be tabled? Definitely.
We certainly can do it through the end of the year.
Councilman Ross, you have a question?
That's for Attorney. Mr. Sherman, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you have in the past participated in several, or at least observed several negotiations for union administration. So my question is, would you agree that council approval of this piece of legislation, the salary ordinance, potentially strongly impacts the negotiations that are yet to happen, and possibly tipping the balance of those negotiations into the power more of the administration? Potentially do that, would you agree?
You are not authorizing salaries for police and fire for next year. There are a lot of employee salaries on the line, so I think that changes the dynamics. I don't know whether you want to say it shifts it one way or the other, but that's a significant change in our process. So, it changes the dynamics. That's about all I can say at this point.
Okay, thank you.
And you are correct. It's still in your court. It's at the council. So.
Other council questions? Councilman Sims.
Thank you. I don't know if this is for Ms. Gutley or Mr. Renison. But I guess what I'm thinking, if we vote to postpone or table this until after the 24th, and then there's no agreement on the 24th on the next scheduled meeting, I guess I'm wondering how does this affect what we tabled it for in the first place? If there is such a thing. So I don't know who can answer that, but I know that nobody can answer that. Well, and I guess what I'm thinking as well is if there is no agreement and then there's another meeting set into the future, then what does that do for us and what we're doing? Do we still have possibly to wait up until the end of the year?
Who would like to take this question?
I can just tell you that we currently have authorization to pay salaries for all city employees, including the council, through the end of this year. So you have until midnight on December 31st to pass salary ordinances for people authorized to get paid. If you pass no salary ordinances, I have no authorization to pay people, regardless of whether the funds are appropriated or not. There's nothing that authorizes me to pay those salaries.
Ms. Guthrie would like to respond.
I wanted to add, too, I think we revert to this year's, no?
There's two questions. One's appropriations. They don't pass appropriations.
Mr. Underwood, bring the microphone up because, that's.
The salary ordinance does not carry over from year to year. It's for year specific. If they don't pass a new salary ordinance, I have no authorization for which to pay salaries on.
Let's see, Councilmember Sims, did you, well, let's dispose of the question. So was your question answered or do you require more? All right, let's go to point ahead.
To complete Mr. Underwood's thought, if we don't pass the appropriation ordinance by number 1, that reverts the previous In other words, the budget out of which we pay salaries will be last year's budget. So we can't defund the entire city by not passing an appropriation ordinance. But if we don't pass the salary ordinance by December 31st, then that is also needed for the administration to pay itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You had a further question, please?
I have one. This is something that I just heard out here, and I don't know, again, I'm sorry, Ms. Guthrie, Deputy Mayor Renaissance. The notion that if we don't pass this budget, that puts some sort of pressure or negotiation advantage to one side or the other. Can either of you speak to that? It seems to me, and I understand what I heard, but it seems to me that even if we pass this tonight, then there would be an appropriation ordinance future to cover whatever is agreed upon in the negotiations. So, I fail to see how what we do or don't do puts some sort of pressure on administration or FOP. I'm not saying there isn't, I'd like someone to try to explain that to me.
Would anyone care to speak to that? We have maybe, Councilmember Sandberg, would you like to comment?
I could maybe try to clarify from my own point of view as I'm trying to justify what I'm about to do here. I don't want to put pressure on anybody because I don't think it is our role up here as council members to get any way involved in the collective bargaining agreement. I've said that from the very beginning. That is between the two sides and their negotiating team. So if I do make any move to support postponement, it is not for the intent of putting pressure. It is for the absolute desire. I want to see them come to some agreement, and I would like to know what that is come October 24th. Before then, I feel comfortable moving forward with my vote and my due diligence as being the fiscal, decision maker here. Does that help at all? I mean, I don't want to take anybody's side because it's not our role up here to do that. Other than we've got a big decision to make. We've asked some pretty serious questions that were raised by the Bloomington Police Department that we have expected our administration to respond to. And I think October 24th will be very telling for us all. And not to put undue pressure on any side, because this negotiating process must proceed as it is intended to proceed.
Councilmember Sims?
Thank you, and that's exactly what I was getting at. Thank you, Councilmember Sandberg. But it was intimated in one of the public comments that one of the reasons that the meeting was scheduled was on the 24th was due to pressure that some of the council people may have been put in, or that the administration may have felt at some of the questions. So I just kind of want to get an understanding of that. And precisely the reason why I asked that is the points that you raised. I don't want to be a part of that. A bargaining chip, if you will, between these two. So that's all I was getting at. Still not as clear as I was 3 minutes ago either. Thank you, Councilman Sandberg. Thank you.
I think, Councilmember Serrone, do you have a question or comment?
Oh, it's comments all over.
All right, let's suppose questions. Do you have a question, Councilmember Ruff? Please.
Well, it's kind of a procedural question at this point. To my earlier question and Councilmember Sims' question, still not fully grasping how possibly approving this ordinance tonight sort of disempowers the position of the FOP in negotiations. Would it be acceptable, or is there a way for us to ask Mr. Post, who's the one who I believe expressed that concern about us taking this action, would be able to, of course, the podium and elaborate on why that could be disempowering to the FOP negotiations?
You'd like to pose that question to whom?
The representative.
Mr. Post, is that, if you'd like to approach the microphone? And
Thank you.
do you need clarification on the question, or you?
So the question is, so I understand, what would not doing this take away, or what does it do?
When earlier I understood you to say that the union was concerned that if we approve this, then it takes away some incentive for the administration to be more collaborative, cooperative, more sensitive to the negotiation position that you have, or that what he has. We're not understanding how that dynamic, I'm not understanding how that dynamic would play out.
Okay. So as an example, it takes months to get things moving when we actually get the whole sides together to meet. Our concern is that, we have less than 3 months of this year, which is the evergreen year of the contract that ended at the end of December 2018. So our concern is that the longer that it takes to keep having these meetings and conversations, months go by each time we want to meet. We don't want that to happen where we get to the point of December of this year where there is no more time. That was my comment about October is, we asked to move quickly. They've suggested using the mediator again, which obviously that then plays into the scheduling of who's available. It's just a matter of we don't want to waste time. It is what it is.
So you weren't saying earlier that if we pass this, we approve this salaries tonight, that it actually weakens your negotiating position? That's what I thought I heard. So I just wanted
I think it goes toward the momentum of what's going on. We want to meet quickly, and if this just continues to kind of just get pushed back, well, it's okay, we're going to meet again in a couple weeks. We feel like that momentum just sort of disappears. Right now, we have people paying attention to it, and it seems to be on the radar. We'd like to keep it on the radar and finalize it. This is something that could have been done January, in our mind. But we just, every time, it's months before we can meet, it takes forever.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Bowles?
Suppose if you say that for a second,
Sure.
the consequences if we defeat this ordinance, if we vote it down as members requested in public comment, then we have no authorization to pay police and fire salaries. Is that the intent?
No, that's the short answer. No, we don't want people to not get paid. We understand the complication as well with having the fire salaries tied into this ordinance.
Let's see, the side is just that we would not be able to pay police salaries
Correct.
if we don't pass this.
And we don't want that situation to get to that point. We want someone to say, hey, we need to really put this to rest and actually come to an agreement on it. We've wasted a lot of time going back and forth.
Sure. Thank you for that. Mr. Underwood, the ordinance is to fix salaries. So the proposal is to fix salaries at what rate? Just for the sake of everybody to be refreshed. What is the rate at which it would fix? I mean,
For
that is.
for the police department, it would be the 2019 salary.
So there would be no increase in salary. So currently,
So that would be the 2018 salary, because we did not get a change this year. Correct? We're still in that evergreen in 2018.
okay, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Further questions? Councilmember Triplett?
Mr. Underwood, do you know how many ordinances there are pertaining to fixing salaries?
There are 3.
Okay, what happens if we don't pass ordinance 19-22?
And you are not authorizing me to pay you all next year.
That's an idea.
Sorry, I was distracted. Are we going to have questions? Well, except I have a question, and I just want to open it up to the administration if you have anything further to add regarding our consideration this evening. That is, to vote up, down, or to table. Since those are the options at this time.
Pre-Corporation Council, I think I would just like to say that our team, we do not believe that we have been delaying. Neither side has been delaying. It's very hard to get all of us together. We've been working diligently for a year and a half now, and we have every intention of, regardless of what happens tonight, of trying to come to an agreement with the FOP, because we all want an agreement.
Thank you. Let's go to council comments. I think Councilmember Granger was first.
Thank you. I actually have a comment about tabling this particular ordinance, and my thinking is that if we table this, it sends a message that the issues of salary and staffing police, Bloomington Police, is of great concern to council. We've been asking for additional officers for years. We this year asked for a plan to increase officers. It sends a message that it's important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to refer to Council Attorney Sherman, is this permissible? The motion hasn't been made. Can people express their intent in terms of tabling and so forth? Okay.
Yes, it makes sense.
All right. Okay. But after the motion is made, there's no discussion or debate, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's see. I've got you all written down here. I think that Councilmember Piedmont Smith was next.
Yeah, I think it just doesn't make sense logically to vote on this tonight, since we do not know what the salaries of the police officers will be. This is an ordinance fixing salaries, and we don't know what they're going to be. And there's no compelling reason why we have to vote on it tonight. It's October 10th, we have until the end of the year. I think all of us here agree it's important to fix the salaries, so we will make time to do it later in the year. So it just, it doesn't make sense to me to vote on this before we know the outcome of the negotiations.
Thank you. Councilmember Volin?
I mean, I want to agree with everything Mr. Piedmont Smith said, and just to point out that as it stands, Ordinance 1920 fixes the salaries of the police officers at the 2018 level. And it doesn't appear that anybody wants that. And also, it could be clarified that unlike the appropriation ordinance, the salary ordinance does not have to be approved by November 1, which is a thing I've learned, and I didn't think there was much to learn in this town after all this time that I've been serving. So there is no compelling reason to pass this ordinance tonight. There is a compelling reason to table it, even though tabling under Robert's rules normally means killing it. It doesn't according to city code. Postponing indefinitely under city code kills legislation, but a motion to table, which again cannot be debated, can be taken up by a vote of the council at any meeting after the meeting at which it is tabled. This is Bloomington Municipal Code 204. So I think that the appropriate motion is to table, and we will figure out sometime between now and December 31st when to bring it back. Thank you.
I have a point of order before we go to Councilman Sturbaum, and that is to Councilman Attorney Sherman. If the motion to table passes, how do we post notice? Do we post notice for the ordinance in how far in advance?
She's subject to open door. I think that's the
48 hours?
Yeah. So
Just 48 hours?
You were doing it in the usual course of business with the fact of going out Friday and meeting occurs no earlier than Wednesday, you're fine.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Or actually, question to follow up. Is there no special notice that, I mean, the budget has sort of special requirements that other ordinances don't?
They do not attach to a salary ordinance. They certainly do attach to the appropriation ordinance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sturbaum and then Councilmember Chopra. Councilmember Sturbaum?
Yeah, I'm going to say that public safety is probably the most profoundly important role to provide for the community. And we have listened to the members who provide that public safety. And I have been convinced that we need to change, that we need to go in a better direction, and whether our role is to send a message or not send a message, I believe that the acting table will send a message, and I'm going to support that.
Councilmember Chopra.
Right, so I'd like to move to postpone and with some, like Councilmember Sturban mentioned, has said, well, it's not our role to get into negotiations, but it is our role and it's our duty to put public pressure on other city elected officials if we don't feel like they're doing the right thing. It's our job to do what our constituents are asking us to do, and if that's we don't have a lot of tools to do that, but I'm going to use this tool tonight to go ahead and vote to table. And I will also use this opportunity because I have a public platform to say that negotiations, because I've been reading the correspondence and how negotiations are going, the city has got to realize there's a major problem. There's a major problem. And it's not something where you can just make incremental change. And so I urge the city to make a drastic change, and pay our public servants as they should be paid so that they can be paid, respected, and recruited. Thank you.
Councilmember Sandberg.
Thank you. I certainly will be in support of tabling this evening with respect to the meeting on the 24th and finding out how that goes. And also I echo the concerns that sometimes this comes down to a matter of conscience. When you hear enough and you hear it as loudly and you hear it as persistently as you've been hearing it, and not only from the good people who have come here over the course of several meetings to talk to us, but also in our own research as we're looking into issues of public safety. I think when we asked for a consultant, we were hoping to get clarity, but that's not going to happen until next year. And I just think that I agree that the issue is pressing and it needs some immediate relief. And it is my sincere hope that on October 24th, both sides of this stalemate can come together and do what you do, which is compromise. But I don't think keeping the salaries at 2018 levels is in any way, shape, or form appropriate, and I cannot support that. So I believe I will be voting to table.
Further comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
Well, I would like to make a comment first. Councilmember Bowman, do you have a further
I
comment?
did have a follow-up. There is the secondary question of, well, if a salary ordinance is approved after the budget's approved, what is our recourse? And the answer is the end of the year afterward. That we have built into our schedule the opportunity to do reversions and the like. But we have to pass an Apple line number one. But that shouldn't be a reason to constrain us from tabling. We just have to recognize that we would have to bring up a new ordinance to change the dollars once they're agreed. So, in case anybody is concerned about appropriation ordinance 1905 or the civil city budget having some impact on the decision on this one, I would say that should be our recourse. Thank you.
Further comments? I'll just say that, first of all, I have a lot of trepidation about this. I don't like inserting ourselves within salary negotiations. I think there have been many meetings with both parties. I think that they have been in good faith. I think that the administration has done a good job in terms of their response to requests. I think that there's been probably the current salaries are a reflection of past salary negotiations that probably have put current salaries behind. So I have a lot of trepidation about that, and I also have a lot of trepidation about our schedule because we have a very busy schedule in the coming weeks. And this adds yet another item. And I'm under a lot of requests right now from council members to fit things in by the end of our year. And that may be sacrificed because this is something we can't do without. That is salaries for the year 2020 for the police and fire. So is there a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilman Ruff.
I'd just like, I appreciate this respect what you just said about scheduling, and it will be a challenge for us, but as other council members said, this is kind of our duty. And I feel like tabling is actually the most neutral thing we can do. You know, people are saying we shouldn't wait either way. I think tabling is the most neutral thing we can do right now. And so I'm going to support that.
Move to table ordinance 1920.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Does it require any public input, any public comments, or should we go to the roll call?
We generally do not accept public comment on procedural motion.
Great. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Councilmember Ruff.
Yes.
Choker.
Yes.
Piedmont-Smith.
Yes.
Granger.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Poland.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Sturbaum.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes 9-0. Ordinance 1920 is tabled.